President, I think we're all a little frustrated right now because the negotiations on the next COVID-19 package seem to be at a standstill. And if you talk to the negotiators and you even read the press accounts, which are pretty open, what they say is that they're deadlocked. And one of the main reasons they're deadlocked is over this issue of unemployment insurance. Now recall, back in the CARES Act, there was an extension of a federal supplement to unemployment insurance. So we put in place a $600 federal benefit on top of the state benefit. At the time, there were concerns about whether that would lead to people on unemployment insurance getting more money than they would at work. And there was actually an amendment here on the House floor, on the Senate floor regarding that. And although it did not pass, I think pretty much every Republican supported it with that concern. In fact, that's what's happened. If you look at what's happened over the past couple of months as the $600 has been put in place, it clearly has led to people making more on unemployment insurance often than they can make at work. In fact, the Congressional Budget Office, which is a nonpartisan group here in the United States Congress that analyzes some of these economic issues, has said that if someone is on unemployment insurance today, they are likely to be making substantially more than someone who is not on unemployment insurance. In other words, people are making more not to work than to work. CBO says, and I quote, roughly 5 out of every 6 recipient would receive benefits that exceeded the weekly amounts they could earn from work during those 6 months, if you were to extend this until the end of the year. In other words, they're saying 80% of UI recipients would make more on unemployment insurance than they would have at their old jobs, meaning that if you followed where the Democrat negotiators are and keeping $600 in place until the end of the year, that there would be an unprecedented disincentive to go to work in this country. And I think that's widely acknowledged. I mean, the University of Chicago has a study that isn't quite 80%. It says 68%, though. I don't think anybody disputes the fact that most people on unemployment insurance are making more than they would if they were at work. And when I talk to my Democratic colleagues about that, they're hearing the same thing I'm hearing from small business owners, by the way, from nonprofits, from employers of all size and all stripes, saying it's tough to get people to come back to work when they can make more by not working on unemployment insurance. And I think a lot of my Democratic colleagues agree, it's good to get people back to work. Get back to work safely, yes, and we ought to be sure that employers are following the guidelines of the Center for Disease Control and others, but it's good to get people back to work because then they're reconnected with their health care. If they have it with their retirement savings, reconnect it with training. And that connection to work is a positive thing, providing people dignity and self-respect that comes with work, so we should all be for that, right? And yet, when you see what's happening in this negotiation, this is being stalled because Democrats are being intransigent. They're saying stubbornly, we're going to stick to $600. Today, there was a press conference with Speaker Pelosi and Democratic leader Schumer, and that's exactly what they said. Here was the quote. "We have said that we're going to have $600. This is necessary," end quote. So I know that that's not where the rank and file are here in this chamber, because I've talked to a number of my Democratic colleagues about this. They realize that the $600, even those who thought it might have been necessary at the time, and I voted for the package at a time when, we had unemployment that was such a shock and so high, and people were in such need of immediate cash. But also, I have heard, again, from so many of my colleagues on both sides of the aisle, that $600 is something I'm hearing about more and more back home from the employers who say we can't get people back to work. So the $600 is something that there needs to be some flexibility on, to come up with a smarter way to ensure people can continue to get a federal supplement, because we do continue to have relatively high unemployment in this country. In my own state of Ohio, it's almost 11% unemployment. But let's not have it be so much that people are incentivized not to work. That doesn't help anybody. There are help wanted signs all over my state. I was at a Ford plant recently where they have 25% absenteeism, which they attribute to this issue. I've been at a lot of small businesses, which is where probably most of my colleagues are hearing a lot of concerns about the fact that they can't get people to come back who used to work for them, and they certainly can't hire the new people who they need, even though they're reopening safely and doing everything they're supposed to do in terms of the guidelines. They're having a tough time getting back to work. There is a auto plant in Ohio where the white-collar workers are now working on the assembly line because they can't get enough workers to work on the assembly line who would normally have that job. So this is a problem right now, and I think everybody acknowledges it except the Democratic negotiators in this negotiation. Now, I don't think we're actually as far apart as the media accounts would suggest, because there are lots of ideas out there. One idea, by the way, that makes a lot of sense to me, and I'm going to offer this in a moment as a resolution for the Senate to take up, and I think this is the ultimate common sense. Let's keep $600 in place for now while we negotiate something. So let's have an extension for another week on the unemployment insurance at $600, just so we can negotiate something. Because what you don't want is the people to fall off the cliff. And that's starting to happen now. The $600 expired last Friday, so 6 days ago it expired. And 7 days ago, Martha McSally, a senator from Arizona, came to this floor and offered this same unanimous consent request, saying, let's just have $600 for another week. And Chuck Schumer objected, the Democratic leader, instead offering the $3.5 trillion package from the House, but didn't respond to, why wouldn't you at least give the negotiators a week to come up with something? So I'm going to offer that same thing today, because I do think it's not fair to have a cliff. I don't think there should be a cliff. I think people should be able to have some level, but not at $600, because that's now understood by everybody to mean that you are disincentivizing work. And Americans are a generous people. Back in 2008 and 2009, when we had the Great Recession, we also did this. And by the way, we did $25 a week then. So for Democrats who say this is unprecedented, well, we had 10% unemployment back then, very high unemployment, and we did $25. I think we should do a lot more than that now, but not so much that people are making more by not working than by working. And there are a lot of ideas out there. Again, my ideas of individual members may not be what this body chooses to use, and that's fine. We're not going to all get our way, but we should be able to come up with a compromise here. My idea is to have a return-to-work bonus so that you're getting the $600, but then you can take some of that money back with you when you go to work. That will create an incentive for people to go back to work and connect people back to those businesses, as we talked about, the importance of doing that. But there are other ideas as well. There's a plan that was put out recently by two Obama administration veterans, former Treasury Secretary Timothy Geithner and economic advisor Jason Furman. They joined with a former H.W. Bush economist, Glenn Hubbard, to put out a proposal from the Aspen Institute, hardly a conservative group, that proposes that the unemployment system, not at $600, but continue at a cap of $400, and have that amount be determined under $400 based on the state's unemployment level and the amount workers were previously earning at work. Now, the way unemployment works right now in the states is the states have a benefit, and this federal benefit is on top of it. Most states provide, on average, about 50% of benefits, some less than that, some more than that. Nobody more than 65%, by the way, whereas, again, the $600 on average is over 100%. It's over 130%, in fact. So this solution from, again, two Obama administration economists is that you have $400 as the cap when unemployment in those states is above 15%, and zero federal supplement when a state is at 7% or less. It phases out entirely. That's one bipartisan solution that's out there. Instead of insisting on $600, I would hope that at least there's a discussion of those kinds of proposals. Senator Romney has a proposal he's put out there that takes the amount from $500 per week in August to $400 to an 80% wage replacement, phasing out altogether by year end. Senator McConnell put his proposal out for a $200 amount over a 2-month period as a transition, and then to go to a percent of wages. His percent of wages is 70% of wages. Again, there's no state that's that high. The states are, 40%, 50%, 60%, in that range. So there are ideas out there, and yet the Democrats keep coming back again and again to this notion of we want it all or nothing. And I will tell you, my colleague from Oregon, who's here on the floor, and I'm glad he is, did a very good job for the Democrats negotiating this proposal. I told him that at the time. And I know he took pride in it, and he should have. But we also need now to figure out where we go going forward. None of us should want people to be disincentivized from going to work. We should not have the situation we have now where, again, you have the leaders on the Democratic side, Speaker Pelosi, and Democratic leader Schumer saying, quote, today, we have said that we're going to have $600, quote, this is necessary, end quote. We have to be able to show some flexibility here, to be able to break this impasse, to be able, yes, to provide for people who lost their jobs through no fault of their own and need some help, but not to continue to have this policy in place that doesn't work for our economy, for our small businesses, and for workers themselves. Let's get the politics out of this. Let's do something that makes sense to be able to move forward on this broader crisis. And I think if we can fix the unemployment insurance issue, we're likely to get there. With that, Mr. President—
Will my colleague from Ohio yield?
I'll be happy to yield. I thank my colleague from Alaska for reclaiming my time. I think he's made a good point. We're not talking about a negotiation even here. We're just talking about a week-long extension of the existing $600 per week so that we can enable people to have some certainty and predictability in their lives. I'm certainly hearing that from folks back home who are on unemployment insurance. What are you guys doing? Why can't you come to an agreement? We kind of all know why. We've talked about it today. Democrats don't seem interested in moving off their proposal, and they said that again today, again and again. They maybe think this is good politics. Maybe they think this is, something that's worth hurting these people who are looking to see, am I going to get my unemployment or not? I had to tell a town hall last night, I had a woman call in, talk about her husband who works in the hospitality business, and he's lost his job. And everybody else in that business for his particular job, has told him, sorry, we're just not open for business. He does need the help. And she didn't insist on 600, but she said, give us some certainty that something will be going forward. So that's what this is about. This is the unanimous consent request, just to say, give us a week at 600, the full amount, in order to negotiate something that makes more sense for the economy, for small businesses, and for workers. And so this Martha McSally motion, which was offered earlier this week and last week, we are going to offer today. It's a unanimous consent request. I ask unanimous consent that the Senate proceed to the immediate consideration of the bill at the desk. I further ask that the bill be considered read a third time and passed, and that the motion to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table. Hoping after all that there wouldn't be an objection, because I can't believe that my friend from Oregon believes that it's not a good idea to do an extension. I mean, all we're talking about is an extension for a week of the $600, the full amount, even though, again, all the data out there shows that that amount is not practical for our economy, for workers, for businesses. And you did a valiant effort of trying to explain why you're not for that, but I know that people who are watching just think it's common sense. Let's continue to discuss, but let's be sure we have, as my colleague from Alaska said, good faith negotiations. And it's not good faith to say $600 or nothing, and that's exactly what the negotiators have said. I wish, to my colleague from Oregon, they would authorize you to negotiate. I think you and I could actually work out something, and I think you probably do too. But they have not authorized us. And the Democratic negotiators have said 600 or nothing. And this notion that the one-week extension doesn't work, absolutely it works. Are you telling me that the state unemployment offices would not provide the $600? Of course they would. There would be a lapse, of course. There would be a week or two, they say. But that $600 would be in people's pockets. And by the way, there's a lapse right now so that people who lost their unemployment last Friday in some states, including Ohio, continue to get it because there's a lapse in the payment. So yeah, people would get the money. Of course they'd get it. And they'd be able to plan on it and have some certainty. And frankly, if it hadn't been blocked last week when Senator McSally stood right over here and offered it, it would be even sooner that people would get it. I say it's 1 to 2 weeks, so for some people, they'd be getting it right now. So it is absolutely essential for us to figure out how to find a way forward here. It's not, to me, an option for us to do nothing. We can't allow this cliff to continue. But in the meantime, all we're saying is, let's just have a little time to work it out, and hopefully the Democrats will get off their $600 and realize that that's not a path forward because it doesn't work. I mean, you're right. When we put the $600 in place, our thought was that would be about average. In other words, it would be the average wage replacement so that you would have, half the people making a little more and half the people making a little less. That's not how it worked out. Again, Congressional Budget Office, nonpartisan CBO says more than 80% of the UI recipients are going to make more on unemployment than they would at their old jobs if you follow the Democrat proposal. And again, University of Chicago says 68%. But that's not what we intended. So certainly we should be able to adjust here, and we should be able to get to yes. And my deep concern is that the negotiators are so intransigent on the Democratic side on this that we'll end up hurting the very people that Democrats are talking about helping. So let's come up with a sensible solution. I think there is a path here, and it's to negotiate in good faith. And I think an executive order isn't necessary if we do our work. And I think inaction, by not negotiating in good faith, is the worst possible outcome. Yield to my colleague from Alaska.